Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Sam Boerboom. This is my colleague, Dr. Melissa Beam, and we're thrilled to be able to present our research with you today. Our presentation, as you can see, is titled Don't Think It Needs to Be a Three-Ring Circus, Advice for Faculty and Administration Regarding HyFlex in 2023. And so our research on HyFlex involves semi-structured interviews. And in particular, we're trying to get at how a deep, rich experience of feedback from faculty who are practicing HyFlex. And so as we scoured the literature, there were four areas that we thought to be most salient. First of all, just to define HyFlex, and this originates with Brian Beatty in 2019. He defined HyFlex at that juncture as hybrid flexible courses. So a hybrid course, which is equal parts online and on-site or some synchronous piece, but giving within that structure, the hybrid structure, students the option on how they want to participate in the course. Now, especially since the pandemic, there have been multiple permutations of HyFlex. Chief among them are modes of synchronous participation. So it may not just be a lecture on site anymore that's recorded. It could also be students dialing in using web conferencing software and participating simultaneously, synchronously with students who are on site. So there are multiple definitions of HyFlex, but at its core, it is a hybrid flexible course. Clearly, Beatty and Wilson have indicated that there are benefits to students. Any modality that offers flexibility to students accommodates students in 2024. Research indicates most of our students are working, right? At least part-time. Some more than that. Students sometimes in some areas have commuting issues and can't always be on campus. So when you offer students more flexibility, that correlates with better student success, student satisfaction, and from an institutional standpoint, retention of students, right? If students feel like they don't have to drop the class, they're more likely to stay in the class. HyFlex also has myriad benefits for faculty. Some of them, Cheng and others have indicated that faculty satisfaction, that sometimes if you offer a HyFlex course, it's a way to ensure that courses are still offered on site while still accommodating students who need to be entirely online. Right? When students have the flexibility and are more likely to participate in a class, obviously that creates a better instructional experience for faculty as well. We'll talk a little bit more about this later in the presentation, but at a regional comprehensive university, the one at which Dr. Beam and I teach, one of the benefits is that, of course, a HyFlex class allows a department to keep scheduling courses that meet on campus and to try to capture those students, those commuter students, those who are residential, those who are even just able to attend sporadically. That is very rewarding for faculty to be able to reach those students. And finally, of course, Lejean and Lundgren, others, Tinoco have talked about the challenges that come to faculty. Chief among these are the increased workload that comes with trying to manage multiple modalities. We'll touch on those issues and others later in the presentation. So we generated two different research questions with these semi-structured interviews with faculty members. The first is, what advice do they have for other faculty considering teaching courses in the HyFlex modality? It's one thing to read about HyFlex in the abstract. It's yet another thing to hear about faculty who have actually taught it, right? To get their feedback, what works, what doesn't work, what are the best practices. The second research question focuses on with those same faculty, what advice they might pass on to administrators and institutional leaders as to how to equitably implement and continue HyFlex as a modality. The research indicates that HyFlex is very popular with students, right? And it can be a very efficient way for university administration to schedule courses, right? Our second research question gets more at how might administrators ensure that all the good things that come with HyFlex can be done so equitably and not at the expense of faculty.
And so our project was it's qualitative in nature. So we used in-depth semi-structured interviews that took place in January and February of 2023. This was actually part of a larger study that we've been working on with regard to HyFlex, but This study just focuses on advice to faculty, as Dr. Boerboom said, and advice to administrators. So we had 10 participants who joined us via WebEx in January and February of 2023. And we used emergent coding where we conducted the interviews. Both of us conducted the interviews via WebEx, and then we talked about some of the themes that we thought were rising to the top. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So with regard to advice to faculty, there were three main themes that came out. The first, not surprisingly, was increased workload. And the second was the importance of first impressions during the initial class meeting. And lastly, the best practice of making small incremental changes to your courses. So with regard to increased workload, these two quotes we thought stood out the most. Be ready for the extra work, lots of extra work. Also, you're essentially adding another class, an online class, an in-person class, and have a teaching plan for both. So faculty wanted to make sure that other faculty who were considering using HyFlex in their classroom, that they knew going in how much work it is, because sometimes that's de-emphasized in the conversation. Another important point is for faculty to know that that first day is critical. A faculty member shared with us, be interesting. The first day is critical because students decide whether they want to come back or just do the work asynchronously. So depending on how HyFlex is defined at different institutions, students, when you give students more choice and you're asking them to join you for that synchronous class meeting, there has to be a benefit to them. And so faculty on that first day, if you can make it really clear what you'll be doing, how the class will be going, especially to students who have some communication anxiety issues, if you can help them know and feel safe that first day, then it's going to be, students will be able to make an informed choice about coming to class after that.
So as we look at our results, what what emerged from our interviews was first that making small incremental changes is much better than trying to revamp your course week to week. There's a variability that comes on the instructor side of the class. It's hard to know sometimes who will show up for the class. Preparing for class can be much more challenging than in a sort of quote unquote traditional class. And so when you get feedback from students, right, it's important to make small changes, right? That creates a less disruptive environment for the students, right? Anything that can be challenging to students in class, right? Especially with a modality they're unfamiliar with, they might just retreat then to just participating entirely online. So make small changes and know that you have the next semester to try something completely different. And as the title of our presentation would indicate, don't think this has to be a three-ring circus. You don't have to be juggling. You don't have to be dancing on a beach ball, right? Trying to make everybody happy all the time, right? The key is to keep trying, keep tinkering, right? Make small changes, and you can explain to the students that this is an experimental modality. I have found, as Dr. Beam, I would imagine that students are willing to work with you and give you grace, and as you explain that you're trying to make this work synchronously and asynchronously. I think they like to be a part of it. They like knowing that the flexibility benefits them, right? And so any changes that you need to make, especially if they know that they're not going to be punished for having some variability in their own schedule, can go a long way. And on our second research question, two themes emerged, and that is that faculty really need administration and institutional leaders to acknowledge the increased workload that comes from HyFlex. I mentioned earlier the variability of attendance. That can be straining, that can be anxiety inducing on the instructor. Just again, managing and grading online only students, those who are in person, and those who might be testing the waters, both modalities, right? The grading is increased. There are lots of extra duties that are increased that come along with HyFlex. And so having administration acknowledge that can go a long, long way. Also, the importance of ongoing training, right? We have found in our research that oftentimes, but not always, this applies to technology that's in the classroom, right? Learning how to manage it, learning what to do when it doesn't go well, right? What resources are available to ensure that your instruction is as seamless as possible. This can especially be true in when you're offering multiple modes of synchronous learning. So you have the on-site students, but you also have students who are participating via web conferencing software. Two different groups of students participating simultaneously and synchronously with one another, blending their experiences to make them as seamless as possible takes a lot of training. And so institutions can really help faculty, support faculty by encouraging that ongoing training. Additionally, some themes emerged with our second research question. Again, acknowledging the increased workload, very, very important. One participant noted that, hey, maybe we could possibly count each HyFlex course as 1.5 courses in a faculty member's workload, especially when it comes to issues of faculty equity, which is, we would argue understudied and maybe even underappreciated in the literature. These conversations are important to have. If HyFlex is valuable to an institution, and it almost always is, right? And students report benefiting from it, retention rates are improved. How might the institution reward faculty, incentivize faculty for offering HyFlex courses, right? Uh, and acknowledging that you're getting paid the same for extra work. And so what might that look like? Other institutions have, paid faculty and their faculty development dollars to learn how to uh, teach HyFlex. There are multiple ways that institutional leaders can not only acknowledge the additional labor that comes from teaching HyFlex, but also in some cases compensate faculty differently who are willing to teach HyFlex. And so, again, ongoing training is important, especially from faculty. If you have a Center for Teaching and Learning, for example, it's important for faculty to learn from peers best practices, what works well and what can be improved from semester to semester. The research indicates that faculty who feel supported for taking that leap of teaching HyFlex, for learning something they probably didn't learn in graduate school, that is that much more rewarding when your peers are there to acknowledge and help work with you, and also from the institution leadership as well. It's also important to see that acknowledgement. More people implementing HyFlex working well is good. It helps model best practices, and again makes you feel like you're part of an institution that cares not only about student success but faculty success as well.
And so, not surprisingly, our results align with previous research. Definitely extra work. Liaison and Lundgren, Malzik, Tinoco, they all talked about the extra work that is inherent in HyFlex courses. And also, Cheng shared about the importance of the first day. And so, we're aligning with previous research. But we also want to point out that this area of research with regard to regional comprehensive universities, so there's research out there about R1s, there's research about community colleges, but what's happening with regional comprehensives with regard to HyFlex. So our study documents the experiences of faculty in many different disciplines at a regional comprehensive university in 2023 and how they were experiencing it. We also think it's important to advocate for faculty workload balance. As Dr. Boerboom mentioned, if it takes more work for faculty to implement HyFlex, then we believe that the institution should acknowledge that in some way. So, of course, we are agreeing with some of the folks who responded to our interviews. So we think that conversation needs to be ongoing. There are definitely limitations to this qualitative study. We did not intend for this to be generalizable, so we are basing it on the 10 faculty that we spoke with. And future research, an area that Dr. Boerboom and I have discussed doing future research, is to do more in-depth, semi-structured interviews with faculty who teach communication at regional comprehensive universities. Our area of specialty is communication, our discipline, so we want to see how our communication faculty using HyFlex. And so here's our references. And thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Right.